Oh,
Yeah, I mean,
no.
All-star
Nate called
chat.
it, so we had to go live.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Erica, have you signed your release form yet? Oh, did she freeze? She's
did.
gone.
Oh no!
Great,
Of
that was
course.
great timing. Yeah.
Oh, there she
Hey,
is.
there you are. Yeah.
Oh no! Now the spell is broken for my editing.
Wait it.
Yeah. Hey, Erica.
Hello.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm great. How are you guys doing?
Hey, will you make sure to turn off all of your background processes?
Yep.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Why did you disappear?
We were talking about bandwidth, and it turns out
Yeah.
a lot.
I thought your
lot of-
face was frozen.
Self-fulfilling prophecies.
Yeah.
Well, it does get like that sometimes, but no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It looked like you were just horrified by what I was saying.
Bandwidth.
Yeah.
Midlife Pilot Band. Yeah.
Yeah. We got an all-star cast of chat members here tonight.
Don't we just need a 182 for pretty much anything? Like anything smaller than a baby grand is a 182 like instrument.
Hit me up, Elliot. I'll fly you and your base wherever you need to go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't fly an upright base in this weather.
Not unless it's hermetically sealed.
What you mean? 87 and 30 degrees, 40 degrees humidity.
Terry said, I'm going for a walk this morning, and I looked at the temperature, and it was like 80. And I was like, well, you should, because there's a cold front apparently that's come through. It's not going to be that way for a while.
Erica, do you feel confident in your internet right now and your whole life force?
Yes. I do.
You do?
Yes.
Why are you grinning like you know something that we don't?
She touched something that she shouldn't have touched.
Yeah,
I got a
why-
feeling she clicked something she shouldn't have clicked.
I'm just so happy to be here, hanging out with my friends on a Monday night. That's why I just can't get the smile off my face.
That's why you left.
Yes.
All right. Well,
Is that an alcoholic beverage in your hand?
No, it's not. It's an energy drink.
Okay.
Nice.
There we go. I love it. All right.
I'm drinking the water they had on Idiocracy.
Yeah. Rondo. Yeah.
Large vodka.
I'm drinking out of my bike and beer festival glass. Strangely enough, and this is from like years ago. Strangely enough, I was walking down the street about a month ago, and like 2 blocks from my house, there was one of these like sitting on the curb. And I was like, oh, that must be mine. I brought it home. It's like, nope, now I have 2 of them.
Huh.
Like for this really like random like narrow thing.
That's the most Portland thing I've ever heard of.
The most Portland thing.
You know, I
Yes.
didn't take you for a thief, Ted.
Well, we do like free boxes on the street and stuff, so I just assumed it was that.
Yeah.
Or it is now. Yeah.
All right.
All right.
Let's roll this puppy.
Yeah, I gotta find my paperwork here. I'll get it when we go live. Great. This is me catching up. There we are.
Welcome to the Midlife Pilot Podcast. What is it like to become a pilot in midlife? The challenges are unique, but so are the rewards. Hosts Ben, Brian, and Ted talk learning to fly, growing as pilots, and the joy of flying to destinations. The purpose of the podcast is not to teach, but to share knowledge and experiences. You definitely should not take any advice too seriously from an aviation podcast that uses terms like icing on the vegetables. Okay, checklists are complete. Let's get the show started.
Hello and welcome to the Midlife Pilot Podcast, where we share our experiences and challenges of flying in midlife. Whether you're a seasoned pilot, training for a rating, or just thinking about getting started in aviation, we like to think of the podcast as your aviation companion and your weekly dose of aviation inspiration. My name is Ben. I'm a pilot with an IFR rating and a commercial cert based in the metro Atlanta area, flying a Cessna 182 I like to call the Beast. Joining me tonight, as always, celebrating another lap around the sun, He's a private pilot in Nashville, home of the Bachelorette Super Charlie, flying a Cherokee 180 named Lucy. Hello, Mr. Siskin, and happy birthday.
Hey, thank you so much. And I wish I could log another trip around the sun. But you know what? I kind of can, right? That's what the birthday is all about. So I really appreciate it. Thank you. Glad to be here. And I am ready for this episode, especially with our topic tonight and with Erica, because I spent all day suffering in an airplane. So ready.
Suffering in an airplane. I think that's oxymoron. Also joining us tonight, our sport pilot friend based in Portlandia, flying a flight design CTLS. We like to call it the Egg. It is our friend Ted. Good evening, sir.
Hey there. I'm doing well, enjoying pretty moderate weather over here. So,
yeah. I'm surprised you didn't change your name to Sitting on an Iceberg, or somebody go get me a sweater.
It is perfect weather here. Yeah.
Yes. Also joining us tonight, a recurring guest that we are very happy to have. She is a CFII. She flies a TBM. She is now a certified CSIP, Cirrus transition instructor, and a what's the word? A prolific YouTuber who has Aerosafe Aviation, and has a great YouTube channel debriefing forecasts and talks about training. It's our friend Erica. Good evening.
Good evening. Hi. Hey, y'all. Happy to be here.
Glad to have you.
We just brought more of the South to the podcast.
Because that's what it needs.
Ben flies out of the airport where I grew up.
Yeah.
So
we're practically related.
Basically. We're all cousins.
Basically. Yeah.
That's a given.
Yeah. The fourth sister I never had. So tonight we're going to be talking about the lovely, wonderful temperatures we've been having under the heat dome, the hotness, except for Ted. Ted doesn't know what we're talking about, but that's okay. But we brought our weather expert on, and it's not just about how you deal with the heat. It applies to a lot of different aspects of aviation, and we want to get into all that. But before we do, I wanted to go around the horn, see what everybody's been up to. Mr. Siskin, you want to kick us off with any personal aviation flying updates?
Well, I just want to give myself a shout out, if that's okay.
Please.
I talked a little bit last week about my experience flying in the PT-19 as part of the event Warbird Day for the commemorative Air Force here in Lebanon, Tennessee. And I just recently published a video about that experience. So please go check that out, because I normally don't shout out the videos or things that I make, but this one is directly built to serve that organization and to help get the word out about what they do. So please check that out. And then in the meantime, I've been flying Lucy, which is not an open canopy airplane, and or should not be. And it's been, nothing, remarkable, but just some good flying and suffering in the heat. And we were actually joking in the plane today. I was with our friend Luke from Luke's Landing, and we were talking about the viability of, if the plane is just sitting there, why not just add a little bit of water to the scenario? It's right there. It's basically a sauna, and people pay good money for this. And we were talking about well, then why don't people just find like a 150 that's got no engine and is sitting in some boneyard somewhere, and just put it in your yard. Just emulate the pain of aviation in your own yard with your own 152 sauna. You could do it. So anyway,
It's basically the most expensive tin can you could sit in.
yeah. I mean, people pay a lot of money for these things. You could sit there and you pretend like you're flying. It could be like simulate.
Yeah. So instead of simulating the actual flying itself, it's simulating the experience of flying.
Yeah, and then
also sitting on the ground is about what you expect out of a Cessna 150 in really hot weather. So
And if you
it's just like
want
it's
to take it to the
moving.
next level, you could get on Pilot Edge and get into a really busy environment. No,
Yeah.
so anyway, done some great flying. I got to say that my wife has been very impressed with my landings, so that feels good. That's always a good thing. Been going back to 2 notches of flaps instead of 3, and I
Okay.
think that's I don't know, something to do that's different or whatever. And so it's been good. I don't know, nothing really exciting, but I've just been flying and enjoying it, and it has been hot. But one of the things I like to do, I did this morning on special days, like, okay, it's my birthday. What do I want to do? I got up before the world got up, and I went up to the airport, and I just went and flew around and just experienced the cool temperatures and solo flying, and just thought about the futility of existence and how. No, I'm just kidding.
A way to bring the mood up, Brian. Thank
Yeah,
you
no,
for that.
it was great. I had an amazing time. It was really beautiful, and so that's one of my favorite things about aviation and general aviation is just being able to commemorate different events with just even a normal flight is really special. So that's what I did.
Awesome. Ted, I know you posted some pictures, or maybe you sent them to me.
I just texted them to you. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So Ted goes on this camping adventure.
Yeah.
And we've said this 100 times, and this goes to our friends Barry and Wendy and everybody that lives up in the Northwest. These pictures that he took, I mean, it's art. He's flying in art. It was just so gorgeous. Tell us a little bit about where you went.
Yeah. So I haven't been back there, and I've needed to. I used to motorcycle in Southeast Washington, which is like Pullman, Papa, PUW. And it's an area called the Palouse, and it's super pretty. I motorcycled there 20 years ago. I haven't been back since about 17 years ago. And so, yeah, I went over and I camped and collected stamps. I camped along the Snake River on a gravel runway.
Wow.
And you actually heard the hum of a small dam that was nearby, just that AC 60 hertz hum from this thing that's like a mile away. And the coyote is like howling, and it's perfect. And then I got up and I went over to Pullman and had breakfast over there at a restaurant that I haven't been to for 17 years, and just enjoyed this landscape. It's like you just took a bed sheet and dropped it. It has like all the kind of ripply texture of that.
I know our audio listeners won't be able to see this, but I'm going to show the people that are watching this live stream, which you can on Monday nights on youtube.com/@midlifepilotpodcast. But I have to show this. Check this out.
Yeah.
Can y'all see that?
Beautiful.
Yeah. So he's showing the picture of that kind of rippling ground and the kind of wheat color of the wheat that grows on it, and then I've got another one that shows just the green instead of that kind of wheat color. It's
that's on the screen now. So
green.
it's just amazing.
So yeah, I should have gone to school there. It's WSU, and I thought about it and said no.
Winter is tough there.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
And you're only 8 miles from Moscow, so there's an advantage of that. Yeah,
That's right.
So anyway, it was these little 24-hour camping trips I like doing. You don't have to. You can get a lot of things wrong, like realizing that you didn't take your pad for underneath the sleeping bag, and handle it fine because it's only 24 hours. And yeah, it was really thrilling. It's probably my favorite place to fly so far that I've flown. So yeah, I really like it over there.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Miss Gilbert, any fun adventures for you in any aircraft that you fly?
Well, yeah, it's been a while since I've been on, so let me count. We did our annual pilgrimage to Montana recently in the TBM, which is my favorite trip. Getting out there is a blast, and it's really beautiful flying.
Which town did you go into?
So we go into southwest Montana. It's about an hour and a half southwest of Bozeman if you were to drive. But who drives?
Is that you're not Ennis, are you?
Yeah, so very close to Ennis,
Okay.
one valley over. So
Yeah, okay.
Ennis is in the Madison River Valley, and we go over to Ruby Valley and Dillon area.
Yep.
And then from there, we visited a couple of friends of ours. So my boyfriend brought a piece of art from a bronze sculptor in Meeteetse, Wyoming. So we flew very low over Yellowstone National Park in the TBM, which is a blast.
Wow.
Low by TBM standards, not low by Cub standards, I'm guessing.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Yep.
Then did a little trip up to Canada, which was a family trip. So, doing the EAPIS to leave the U.S. and all the immigration stuff into Canada. Once you're up there, it's pretty easy. Flew over to Winnipeg and picked up some other guests and brought them back to where we were, and big hubbub. And then outside of that, been doing some instruction in Cirrus, getting checked out in a DA50 that a friend of mine owns, and he's also purchasing a 170 that I'll start flying here next week. So, yeah, lots of fun
Who's
stuff.
going to say it first?
Oh man, that's so great.
Oh,
Hey, by the way,
now-
sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say I can come up and do my Cirrus transition and my tail wheel.
Absolutely.
There it is.
Absolutely.
Take your drink.
Hey, Erica, I was gonna say, you have mentioned to us before that your ideal length of the leg of a flight is synonymous to what your bladder evaluation you said was at about 90 minutes.
Yes.
So when you're talking about these flights that are going to Canada, what's happening there? How many stops are you making?
Yeah, so your name, Brian, tonight, Dehydrated to Perfection. It speaks perfectly to to the scenario. Those mornings that we have a full airplane is key, and I know we're going to be over 2 hours in the airplane. So that trip up to where we were headed in Canada was about 3 hours and 15 minutes, door closed to door open. I don't drink coffee and don't drink a lot of water. I just sip on water and make it. Now, when it's trips with just my boyfriend and I on the airplane, I'm prepared to hop in the back. But yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say your lovely guests that you picked up to do on the return trip. Maybe they're not partial to that kind of. They don't want to see that.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And Ben, have you been flying?
I have not.
Okay.
Not since Gunnersville was my last flight. We are leaving this week, going down to St. Simon's.
Nice.
So,
but you had insane weather there.
yeah, and that's kind of folds right into our topic tonight. Do we want to go ahead and hit the housekeeping before we jump into that, Brian?
Yeah, let's just knock everything out because we
Yeah.
got so much to talk about with Erica, and I just would love to get into it. So here's what I'll do: is I'll hit the housekeeping and the review that was left, and then we can maybe we'll skip that feedback, and then we'll go and we'll do that one next week, and then we can do a quick community update, and then get into this. How does that sound?
I like it.
Sounds
And
great.
so Rachel C., who emailed us, congratulations on getting your license. We're going to get your feedback next week.
Right on. All right. Housekeeping. We're grateful for you guys making this the best pilot community that we know of, a positive space where we share everything from training experiences, share personal minimums, tackle ownership challenges, review flight plans, and best of all, make new aviation friends like Erica. Connect with us, join our Patreon community from $1 a month, or do a one-time annual Patreon, 25 cents per episode, access exclusive content, including check ride debriefs, killing zone conversations, and more, including the Discord. Best community on the internet. 10% supports Freedom Aviation Network's anti-human trafficking efforts. Watch us live on YouTube, Mondays, 8 p.m. Eastern. Share your stories, midlifepilotpodcast@gmail.com, so that we can skip them every week, but we'll eventually get to them. We read all these messages, and we will get to them on the show. For everything Midlife Pilot Podcast, community feedback, merch, and more, visit midlifepilotpodcast.com. And for those in the know, there might be a new fun shirt that we have there as of last week. And we got more of that coming. Real quick, a review from Mick Dickinson. Just want to remind everybody, please leave 5-star reviews on Apple Podcasts. We need them in order to fool the algorithm as to our legitimacy. And so please help us with this whole grift with the algorithm. So Mick Dickinson says, great lessons about real world flying. My favorite thing about this podcast is that all of the hosts are focused on real world general aviation flying. They supply the missing lessons from your pilot training, how to take care of an aircraft, how to plan long cross-country trips, and how to deal with surprises along the way. They approach it all with humor and humility. Highly recommended. Thank you, Mick Dickinson. And,
Yes, sir.
we're just doing what we know, which is a very narrow swath.
It's easy to be humble when you're, at our end of things.
When you're on the ground level.
All right. So, Ted, hit us with the community updates real quick, and then we'll get to Erica.
First, speaking of community, I gotta hit the comments here. There's a real hang up here on Erica saying she doesn't drink coffee. Banjo Pilot's like, no coffee? What? How? Why? Banjo Pilot, I didn't know that was a thing. And Chuck, I heard the words, but I don't understand the concept. Coffee? And Banjo Pilot, isn't coffee explicitly listed on the I'm Safe checklist? It's all good. So everybody's different, Some people actually like low-wing planes, right? Like we allow a lot of diversity in this crowd. So coffee drinkers, non-coffee drinkers, non-alcohol drinkers, it's all good. So
To be clear, I do drink coffee, and so those long flights are difficult for me without coffee.
Oh, you don't drink it when you fly.
On those long legs, yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah, but I drink it all day long normally.
Gotcha.
Oh, okay.
Well, that's
All right.
that saves a little bit. Although
It really does.
We thought you were dangerous.
Yeah.
Although speaking of dangerous, I do think Chris C may be dangerous, who doesn't drink coffee.
Yeah.
So Patreon supporters this week at the Landomatic level, we've got Mike F. At the Hershey Bar level, Paul S. and Ryan W. joined us. So thank you all for joining this this little world that we're in. I found there are a bunch of accomplishments in mentioned in Discord this week that I want to highlight. But before I do that, out of a safety conversation, we won't talk about the rest of that, but I had to pull out the quote from BitShifter who said, if I ever get a case of get-there-itis that bad, please hit me with a brick. So there you go. Anyway, on to our accomplishments. BitShifter had his first solo time in a 172 and his first solo time at all since March. So congrats.
Yeah.
Zach M. Zach is in Texas. His daughter got her PPL, and the goal was to get it before college. So she's done that. And congrats both to Zach's daughter and to Zach. Zach in DC, that's why I mentioned places. Zach got his high performance endorsement for a Dakota. Well, for anything, but specifically had a Dakota. So that's awesome. Jess passed his 100-hour mark. And Chris C., Mr. No Coffee, also passed his 100-hour mark. He was sitting at 99.5, and so his in his logbook it now says best 99-hour pilot ever from his CFI. That's a great logbook comment. Yep. He also had his first IMC with an instructor in the plane. And finally, Rachel C., Australia, who we mentioned, got her passed her private check ride, and that was an upgrade from Sport in Australia. So.
And real quick, behind the scenes, our friend Wendell Geek is actually trying to work on a pilot debrief and understanding what it takes to pass your check ride in Australia. I think that'd be kind of a cool debrief.
Yeah.
So thank you both for that. So we wanted to approach this with Erica on in a couple of different facets. First of all, from the weather itself, what we can expect with very high temperatures. Ted, you were talking about how it's been here in the afternoons, how it affects us physiologically, how it affects your airplane, both the engine and its performance. There's a lot of different facets when it comes to flying. I don't want to say extreme heat, but because it seems like it's this way now for a lot, but it's pretty daggum hot out there. But I thought we'd kick it off. Really, you mentioned your notes. We're all under this big heat dome right now, Erica. Can you provide us a little bit of insight about what it's like living in a heat dome and what it actually is?
Sounds like a Prince song.
I think that I made the comment in the Discord server that it makes us feel like we're all on the Truman Show, right? When we talk about being in a dome.
Like, I'm just thinking of Stephen King. Yeah, Stephen King's under the dome, but yes.
Yeah. I'm just waiting for my boyfriend to like turn to a camera and give an ad for the Diet Pepsi that he drinks every day. So, but no, we're going through this phenomenon, the heat dome, which, it's talking about, I guess we're kind of on the tail end of it now, but, in the western and eastern part of the U.S., we've had this really high pressure come in and just kind of settle in. So that holds down a lot of the heat. And because it's high pressure, it's super stable air. There's not a lot of movement, and there's not a lot of cloud coverage or precipitation to give us a break from that heat. And so it's been oppressively hot throughout a lot of the US. And just like Ben said, not only does that affect the performance of our aircraft, which we all learn about as we're becoming private pilots, but we should not forget or neglect the way that it affects us physiologically. So when we think about flying in high temperatures, we should think about really two main questions, which is how do we keep cool? And then how do we keep our aircraft engines cool?
We're not going to get cool.
Yeah.
And how do we look cool?
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, some of us have given up all hope of looking cool. So, for me, obviously hydration is the number one thing. And I drink at least 100 ounces of water. I do track my water, and I do drink a lot. And sometimes it is actually water. But for me, it's almost when I'm in the plane, I have a roll of paper towels, and it's kind of a suck it up buttercup moment. It's hot. It's going to be this way. Have something to keep the sweat out of my eyes. I have my trusty water bottle sitting in my little caddy in between the seats, and let's see how quickly we can get up to altitude. That's the game. And let's see how high we can stay for as long as we can so we're not descending into the heat. Now, performance of the airplane aside, we're here in the South, so our DA is not going to be super drastic. But, it's kind of a, hey, either get to where you need to be by noon or just know you're going to need to hydrate.
Yeah, absolutely. That is one of the solutions. And in fact, there were a couple of lessons that I canceled last week in the afternoon just because it was so hot.
Mm-hmm.
You compound the heat with myself as an instructor where I'm in airplanes all day, and the physiological effects, the way it affects you cognitively and just from a fatigue standpoint, they increase exponentially. So, for me, if my first flight of the day starts at 8 a.m. when it was already 85 degrees and super humid, continuing on and doing those afternoon lessons didn't really, it seemed like a risk that I was unwilling to take in terms of the fatigue and all the other aspects with it. So, yeah, done by noon is definitely a potential solution there with the heat.
It's got to be terrible as an instructor because you're doing pattern work. Like, you can't just get up to altitude and stay there for 3 hours.
Well, yes. For instructors who work a lot with primary students, a lot of what I do is transition training and instruments, and so not so much the primary stuff. But yes, for those instructors who are in the pattern getting beat up, it can be difficult, especially if they're in an airplane without air conditioning.
It's probably very motivating as if you're looking to be a professional instructor on a long arc as opposed to just trying to hurry to the airlines. It's probably very motivating to become a double I. I would like to do the transition. What are the planes with the air conditioning? Yes, I want to do transition training to air conditioned airplane. I mean, whatever. Yeah. I have a question. My question is, and thank you, Erica, for being on tonight and taking our questions. You are a mensch. Ben, is there a female word for mensch?
It's still there. We're all mensch. It's
all
unisex.
Yeah, yeah, fantastic. So I wonder about, I'll just say this. I had an experience right after I got my solo endorsement, I believe it was. And I, was so hungry to go up and get that solo experience after having had my first solo. And then I think I did a practice area solo. And then I wanted to go back up and maybe do another, like a solo where I was doing pattern work or something. And it was extraordinarily hot. And I remember being so overwhelmed with how hot I was that I was kind of losing it. And I think that uh, talk a little bit to the physiological aspects of this, because I will always remember that moment as sort of an initial shaping of my ADM, because I decided to stop what I was doing. I had been toughing it out and training all through this heat, but there was something about that day where it was affecting me more, because I think I was a little bit more worked up about, soloing, and I wasn't used to that yet and whatever. And it was busy and the pattern and all this, but I just I want to know more about your perspective on the physiological aspect of it, because to be honest, it really felt like, in the same way that people are having important conversations about carbon monoxide or hypoxia or these things, I was having essentially almost hallucinations. Right, it was so hot, and so speak to that maybe a little bit, the physiological.
Yeah, it sounds like maybe you were kind of teetering on the edge of heat exhaustion, which would be the extreme end of what we can face from a physiological perspective with heat. On the low end, it can kind of elevate some emotional states, right? So sometimes we get maybe more frustrated, or our tempers rise. I don't know. Do you guys remember when you were kids, maybe, and like, you're with your parents out somewhere during the summertime, and you want to like, hug your mom or touch your mom, and she's just like, "Get off me." That's what I think.
Terry
of as
said
a
that
mom.
to me yesterday. Actually.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Oh, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. Well, okay. That's how we all kind of feel. I think moms just kind of bear most of it because, people come to us to be touched, right? So frustrations and tempers can run kind of high because we just have this elevated stress that comes with the heat. And it affects us physically, and we can experience things like dehydration, and that can even compound the effects of heat, because if we have less water in our body, we don't sweat as effectively. And, as we all know, that's how our body cools off, through the evaporation and the heat that is absorbed when that sweat evaporates. Alcohol use can also affect our body's ability to regulate temperature, and can also make us dehydrated. So that can further the effect. And then, so the effects of heat stroke. So heat stroke is when our core temperature gets to 100 degrees or higher. And when it is super hot outside, our body can't regulate and, come down to those more normal temperatures, which we know is 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit. Those symptoms, it sounds like, Brian, maybe you were experiencing some of those symptoms of heat stroke. So on the far end of what can happen when it's hot could be feeling faint or dizzy, fatigue, a weak pulse but rapid pulse. Interestingly enough, cool, moist skin and having goosebumps. A blood pressure dropping when we stand up, muscle cramps, nausea, and headaches. So all of those can be experienced when it's hot outside, and clearly pretty much all of those are indicating a high level of stress that our body's going through, which means we should not be in an airplane.
Yeah.
Yep. And I've got to go dig them back out, but we also have clip fans that you can just clip onto the glare shield and set it up. When you're taxing, it's kind of moving hot air around a little bit, but it's still something it's not getting worse. At least you're maybe maintaining your current body temperature. But I do find that, and I know there's a bunch of devices out there that you can buy, coolers with fans blowing out of the top of them, and there are other ways to try to mitigate the overheating on the ground, at least.
Yeah, there absolutely are.
What have you seen in your instruction of students what are signs that you see in their flying that are perhaps indications of this is getting to them? Or even in yourself?
Yeah, I would say, the brain kind of slows down when it's hot. And maybe instead of, thinking about energy management, like, configuring the aircraft, being on speed, having the right power, where instead our brain is thinking about how hot it is and how uncomfortable we are.
That's what I'm just really curious about, is just where it manifests into the actual act of flying. Because I know that for me, I will find myself being perhaps less judicious with a checklist on the ground, or just let's get this thing moving. your sequence, your rhythm gets affected. And then I don't know, you might be inclined to climb more aggressively than what you normally would, and maybe that puts you perhaps at a particular edge that you wouldn't normally be on, or a less margin. I'm just curious about, or understanding what ATC is saying. It's like, I don't know, like I'm just curious about the ways that this really, what I'm really hoping for is for you to elucidate something that will trigger someone listening to go, oh wait, I'm doing that because I understand that I'm rushing this now because I'm just hot. I'm not thinking about that enough. And in the same way that we should notice hazardous attitudes and those should be flags that get raised, I'm just trying to figure out all the ways that we can elucidate that materializes in the act of flying.
Yeah, I think that's a great question, right? So, what are our red flags? And to your point exactly, there is a tendency to rush ground ops, maybe a tendency to rush the pre-flight, just, in the hopes of getting the engine started so that we can have some airflow. And then, for me, when it comes to a training environment, that raised temper, that lack of patience really takes from, in a sense, the learning experience. I think that can be a learning experience in and of itself. Like you said, when you were solo and it was really hot, you learned from that experience about heat and how it affects you. But yeah, there's definitely a tendency to rush the ground ops, and that's probably the biggest issue. And when it is hot outside and you notice that maybe you're not running your checklist as thoroughly as you normally do because you want to get that big fan moving in front of the aircraft, that is a sign you need to slow down or maybe go cool off for a little bit.
I have a strategy so when we went up to Gunnersville, I drive the truck right up to the car, and then I let Terry sit in the truck that's AC for the sole purpose of allowing me to take I didn't want her sitting in the airplane with no air blow, nothing, no air conditioning or anything. So I can take my time and I don't have to worry about her being so uncomfortable. And then when I tell her, her job's to park the truck, and it kind of works well that it doesn't take any more time that we need. So it's just a little strategy that I use to help myself from not rushing.
Passenger management and even distraction for you. Yeah.
Right.
It sounds to me like a lot of the problem is kind of being behind the airplane because you're just mentally, you're stressed and aren't able to process as much. Does that seem reasonable?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. You're focused on something, that you don't have any control over, and it is having a physical effect on you, and they're therefore affecting you mentally and emotionally. So yeah, so when it comes to solutions for mitigating some of that, me personally, when I fly, I like to wear outdoor gear, like fishing pants and a fishing shirt, something long sleeve and long pants. And I get a lot of flack for it, actually. People are like, it's so hot outside. Why are you wearing long sleeves? And I'm like, if you look at people who live in really hot climates in the desert, they wear things that cover their whole body. And it actually helps you stay a lot cooler and protect you from the sun. So that's an important tip.
And then they say, shut up, nerd.
Yeah, I hear that a lot, actually.
something I learned that didn't even make sense until you experienced it, which is when it gets over your body temperature, when it gets 99 degrees and hotter, air flowing across your skin isn't necessarily cooling you down. Now, it will from evaporation, but just getting the airflow across you isn't helping. And
when your humidity level's at 98%, you're not getting a lot of evaporation to begin with, which is why I wear long sleeves and long pants. They're loosely fitting, and to your point, but it doesn't help you. You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
Another point that I wanted to ask you about as well is medications. There's medications out there that can affect you differently in this type of weather. Can you comment on that?
Yeah, so I don't know of any specifically. I know that there are, like some prescriptions that are maybe approved by the FAA for like high blood pressure can be diuretics. And so when we take diuretics, our body tends to, void fluids. which can lead to dehydration if you don't
Yep.
mitigate that appropriately. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's important to be mindful of that, and just be sure that you understand how those, if it's over the counter or FAA approved with prescription, obviously it's got to be FAA approved for both of those. Otherwise, we either need to ground ourselves or the AME is going to do it for us. But we need to make sure that we understand how those affect our bodies, specifically in hot temperature.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's move on to the next effects of heat on our airplanes. It's not only obviously the critical piece is density altitude, and we have listeners, believe it or not, all over the country, and some of them live in the higher elevations, in the mountainous states. Here, I started just for the practice of maybe one day being a pilot that's compensated, and I'm in these airports. I do practice or look up my ground roll in different temperatures just to get myself into the habit of it. But density altitude, Brian, you probably got between the three of us, you've got the most experience flying in out of Marfa in the middle of the summer.
Ted also has flown impossible runs
Yep.
in a CTLS.
That's true. I wasn't trying to exclude you, Ted.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think the advice that I got, that I've mentioned several times before, is really the advice, and I'm sure Erica, you would say the same thing, which is fly your indicated airspeed. If you're trying to remember anything about what is to be remembered about flying in density altitude, if you can just remember the one thing, which is fly your indicated airspeed. And I'm talking about to the level of almost spatial disorientation, in the sense that the ground is going to be when it's really high density altitude, the ground is going to be going by so fast, and it's going to be such an unusual and stirring thing to be perceiving, and especially in your peripheral vision, that you have to resist in the same way that you would in IMC with spatial disorientation, trusting your body and trusting your instruments instead. I would say it's the same thing for density altitude, where you have to just prepare yourself, know that your instincts are going to want to slow the plane down, and do not. You fly the indicated airspeed.
Well, and not only those instincts of the speed, but also that this isn't where the nose is pitched on a takeoff. Like, why is it so flat? Let me pitch up how it normally is, instead of looking at airspeed, which is the opposite of what us VFR pilots have been taught, right? Which is look outside.
Right. And I was going to make a comment on that. We have climb performance. If when we were leaving to come up to see you, I pulled it up to 1,000 foot per minute, and it was handling that. It was on the little bit backside of the curve. I was doing about 90 miles an hour. My performance climbs at 80, so I was well within margin. But those engine temps, when you hang it on the prop, it's already getting really hot. But when you're in the summer, it exacerbates it that much more. Yeah. So it's been a conscious effort for me, starting now to the end of the summer, is I'm not going to climb, unless obviously if terrain dictates, but I'm not going to climb more than 750 feet per minute, just to do for the sole purpose of engine cooling.
This is just a backhanded brag of the beast being such a
I
fantastic
know,
plane.
right?
Like, when was the last time I've been able to brag about the beast? I mean, I had to get it in there.
Guys, I have to be very aware and scale back my climbing to 750 feet per minute when it's 120 degrees outside. Okay, yeah. I get it, man. Because when I have a grand piano in the back, it's really,
when I have Elliot's upright bass in the back,
Yeah, exactly.
No, I might get it down to 600 feet per minute. But
know what your cruise climb is, right, Erica? And get into that.
Absolutely. So you guys hit on some really great points, which is like, practically, what are we going to see? So just to refresh for those who are maybe in training and maybe a little unfamiliar with density altitude. Density altitude is pressure altitude corrected for non-standard temperature. That's the definition that the FAA wants and your examiner is going to want. But what it really means is, where does the airplane feel like it is? And it's based on how far apart are the air molecules. So when the air molecules are farther apart, we have less substance to produce lift and to produce thrust, and for the engine to consume. So there's less air for the engine to consume to produce as much power. So high density altitude with those air molecules farther apart affects us negatively in many ways. And essentially what it means is the aircraft has to be moving faster through the air and across the ground in order to produce enough thrust and enough lift for it to actually fly. So we get reduced performance, our takeoff roll takes longer, our climb performance is degraded, and our landing roll takes a lot longer as well because our true airspeed is higher. So that's what Brian was kind of getting to with, it's going to look like your airplane's moving faster because it is moving faster across the ground, but the airplane feels like it's normal as long as you fly by the indicated airspeed. Where that becomes really important is we're demanding a lot out of our engine when we don't have a lot of air to help cool it. Most of us are flying air-cooled engines. There aren't many liquid-cooled engines in general aviation. Yeah. I said most. 75% is most.
Yeah, or more. Yeah.
Yeah. So Ted's flying a liquid-cooled engine, which is great. One less concern for him. In a way, however, you do have to pay attention to your engine temperature. Make sure that you've got enough coolant liquid in there.
I'll talk about that if I get a chance, but yes, that is an issue. But with air cooled, it's so critical because that's the only thing you have that's cooling it down.
Right. Yeah.
I was taught to on a long climb, especially we're trying to get to altitude when it's hot weather. So if you say you're climbing to 9,500 or wherever you're going, even if you're in a, you can put your nose down and give your engine a minute. You don't have to stay in the progression of your climb on some equal trajectory the whole time. You can slow your climb to 150 feet per minute and then edge it back up to 500 feet per minute or whatever is kind of normalized for what you're doing. So there's all that too. By the way, I'm waiting for somebody to do a density altitude metaphor using hungry hippos. And so imagine each hippo is a cylinder, okay, of your engine. Follow me here. Just wait. You guys are looking at me like I'm insane.
All of us are waiting for it.
Yeah,
let us have it.
So the marbles are the air molecules, right? And so if you just drop, say, 7 marbles in the middle of the hungry hippo board and start going crazy with all the hippos, they're only able to capture so many, right? That's what density altitude is. When it's cold weather, they're just drowning in marbles. There's marbles everywhere. They're just scooping them up like crazy.
Yeah, you've definitely lost your marbles there.
Yeah. But by the way, I just been looking for a reason to bring up hungry hippos for a long time, and that's the best I could do.
I think you had a bet with Luke that you would get that worked that into the podcast, and
I'll tell you this without naming names, guys. Without naming names, there has been some conversation about some Easter eggs. So anyway, I'll just leave it at that. So all right, Erica, tell us about when. Hang
on. Oh, I wanted to get. I am curious to know about what Ted has to worry about with liquid cooled, because we have another sport pilot in our chat tonight. And there's other people that are going to be flying.
It's like your plane is a bong.
I know. So
it is very nice. It's normally a luxury. One of the problems is that whenever you're below 98% throttle, it's running lean of peak, and just because it's the ECU, it's fuel injected, and so it's always on the edge of just generating a ton of heat. If you're sitting at idle on the ground with no airflow, you're really on the edge there. Any bit of tailwind, like you're sitting to take off into your 180 from the runway direction, any tiny bit of tailwind, it'll start to overheat just immediately. And I've even had it in very cool weather, and I need to try it, but I've been told now, get your RPM up about halfway up, which is about 3,000 to 4,000 RPM. And I'm just not used to when that happens, wanting to get my RPM up that high on the ground. So that's one case. There's very little coolant in it. There's half a gallon of coolant in the whole engine. So it's designed to fly through the air, just like the air-cooled motors are. So it can still be a problem, even in that. It's much less of an issue than yours. But
Ted, the liquid-cooled engines aircraft that I've flown, the coolant was a closed system. It's not accessible by the pilot, only by maintenance. Is it the same in your engine, or are you able to add liquid to the coolant system?
I've got an overflow tank. that I've never had to add anything to, but theoretically it exists. Yeah.
Got it. Yeah, so that gets to, a bigger idea, which is we need to know our aircraft, right? So how is it cooled? And if we know how it's cooled, then we know how to mitigate the risk of over-temping. So to Brian's point, an en route climb is super critical to use when it's hot outside. Usually somewhere around 10 knots faster than VY is really great, not just for cooling, but also for improved visibility as we're climbing, but really important for cooling as well. Because for air-cooled engines, the way to cool your engine down is to reduce your angle of attack, increase the airflow. And we can monitor that by looking at our CHT gauges if we have that. Some of us are maybe flying aircraft that only have an oil temperature gauge, though. And while that is less precise, it still will be accurate enough to see that there's a normal operating range and we need to stay within that. And Brian, also to your point, if you need to, level off for a little bit. Pull the power back, enrichen the mixture if you are rich of peak, and let the engine cool off before continuing your climb. Just tell ATC.
Yep. Some of us have cowl flaps. A lot of planes have cowl flaps. And I usually close mine as soon as the first item on my cruise checklist. But in this weather, I'll leave them open for a good bit just to really let those temperatures come all the way down to where they are, so I know where they're sitting. So that's about the only thing I modify on mine, is that I leave them open. I mean, with the cowl flaps closed, I'm gaining maybe 2 to 3 knots. It's really not that much drag. But typically in a headwind is when I want them closed. And but yeah, I do leave them open a little bit longer to help keep it a little cooler longer.
Yeah, that is a good tip. Definitely take advantage of the systems that are available to you.
Another thing I was thinking about too is being aware of the fact that you're not alone. Other pilots are also going through the same conditions and suffering to the same level that you are, most likely, in this flight that you might be on in hot weather. And so you have to be aware of the fact that other people's decision making might be more hasty, or there might be, you can maybe anticipate the tendency of, the reason why this guy's coming in on a long downwind at 140 knots is because he does not want to be here right now, or whatever. And so you can maybe do some things to apply what you're being self-aware about to be externally aware about as well. I was wondering if B&A was having a problem with their air conditioning today, because when I was coming in just about a couple hours ago, coming in from the north into John Toon, they told me to take 10 left to avoid, I guess, the arrival corridor of B&A. And I just thought, that's putting me more in the arrival corridor of B&A. And it was one of those things where, with ATC, you don't want to, sometimes you want to, when it's really busy, you don't want to just necessarily introduce, now we've got question time.
Right.
So what I did was the old say it back really hyper clearly on the read back at a reasonable pace where he could definitely hear me reading it back, to give him a chance to hear, to correct, quote unquote, me, even though I'm just repeating what he said. And I said, okay, 10 left, 16 Lima, and then that was it. And I didn't hear anything. I was like, I guess that's what he means, man. I don't know. And then I started doing that, and then and then he came back a little bit later. He goes, were you able to make that? Or I said, well, yeah, I made the turn. I made the 10 left. He's like, oh my gosh. He's like, it's actually, I said, I said, 20 right is what you're going to say.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Got it. Yep. So, but anyway, it's just, I think it actually kind of throws off, in all capacities, a lot of people's game when things are just up there in temperature. So just maybe the advice that I would parlay out is just to say it's everybody else too. It's not just you.
Yeah.
Yep. I do, before we run out of time, I do want to talk about weather in this, and the effects that the heat has, because, I learned so much more about weather from aerosafe than I have a lot of other things. And if you don't know, that's Erica's channel. You should go check it out, Ted. And I'm sure you'll have that in our show notes.
Yep.
But and I made the comment earlier. In the summer, you really need to be where you're going, if you're in the southeast at least, by noon, because the pop-ups. Well, I mean, even coming back from Gunnersville, we started off at 7,000, and then we climbed 9,000, and at that we were still dodging the tops. And it, you can only go so high. So you need to keep that in your planning when you're doing that. But anything else you want to touch on, Erica, with that?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a great point. When we think about the weather, you can kind of try to distill it down to just temperature and dew point if you can. The higher the temperature and the higher the dew point, the more likely it is that weather's going to get bad. And if you think about how those two things are going to change throughout the day, you can think somewhat like a meteorologist and prepare for it as an aviator. So, to your point, when it's really hot, as the day continues on and we get more thermal energy from the sun, the temperature increases. And with that, the air's capacity to hold water vapor also increases. And so that's why we see some of those thunderstorms that pop up in the afternoon, just those air mass thunderstorms, because the uneven heating of the Earth's surface creates some lifting action within a certain air parcel that might be unstable compared to the air surrounding it. So now we've got sufficient moisture, we've got lifting action and instability, thus we get thunderstorms. So just be super mindful of that as you're flying around. Not only will those increased temperatures affect you adversely, both physiologically and from the aircraft performance perspective, but there's going to be adverse weather conditions that might pop up. So just always be very mindful of that.
So
Even if it's not in a TAF, look in the forecast discussion because it might be in there.
For here, they typically pop up. It's going to be, I guess it's the afternoon release of the TAF is usually when they show up. To your question from much earlier in the podcast, Ted,
Yeah.
I think we had 9 days straight of thunderstorms, and they were pretty heavy thunderstorms that rolled through here. And we'd get one day where they wouldn't come through, and then we get another 3 days in a row. It's been really bad here. A lot of trees down, but that's just, I guess that's where we live in now.
The reason I was asking you was because I saw in the news that Delta had taken 100 planes offline to inspect after the hailstorms in Atlanta.
Yep.
Wow.
Delta's
they
used
shut
to
the
be
tower
in
down.
Atlanta. Yeah.
They shut Atlanta's tower down due to severe high winds, and I think there was a brief power outage.
Wow.
But yeah, we went ATC 0, so
Yeah.
it's a fun time to watch FlightAware and see how they what they do with that traffic.
The busiest airport in the U.S. Yeah.
ATC 0 sounds like sugar-free ATC. We don't have a ton of time left here. I can't believe, right, that this is Erica. When you're on it, everything time flies because we're learning so much.
You never have enough time.
And
with Erica.
you're probably one of the greatest friends the podcast has. So thank you for being on. But before you go, I want to just kind of bookend that topic that we've been talking about, and really I want to hear a little bit more about what you've been doing, because first of all, you've got this amazing newsletter that you're putting out and that everybody can get their hands on. You've got your Instagram, your Facebook, TikTok. You got all these things going on. You've been making a huge push with all of your just everything, right? So tell us what's happening in the world of Gilbert Aviation.
Thank you, Brian, for mentioning that. And I love being here. It really is. We're getting the band back together. Just it feels like
That's
hanging
right.
out with my friends on a Monday night.
You're the singer.
I don't know about that. But yeah, so together with the girl that runs my social media, her name is Haley, and she is fabulous. We've been really trying to work on, getting weather information out to aviators, because it is, I think, where a lot of their knowledge is lacking. So we've done IFR courses in the past, and we've got a weather course that we're starting. It's going to be every Saturday in July. So we've got a lot of media that's going out and talking about weather, and encouraging people to sign up and take advantage of the course that we're offering, which is all practical, real life. How do we understand the weather? How do we simplify it? Which, I hit on that tonight, just simplifying it to temperature and dew point. How do we interpret the charts? How do we make decisions based off of that? And how do we stay safe and avoid hazardous weather?
I love the fact too that you really challenge the notion of, or not challenge, you invite pilots to admit that they don't know as much about weather as they could or should, and you create an environment for them to reconcile with that, irrespective of what their experience level is.
I have one for you right now, something that I learned on the podcast tonight, or I knew about it, but I didn't put two and two together, which is, I think, the number one thing that your channel does. People absorb different pieces of knowledge, but they don't always connect it very well. I've always looked at temperature and dew point as the spread for when fog was going to appear.
Yeah.
It never occurred to me to look at a high dew point level, irrespective of what the temperature is, to know how much moisture is in the air for the occurrence of thunderstorms. It just never occurred to me. Yeah. So I know that when I see the dew points at 25C, 28C, there's going to be thunderstorms.
Yes, very likely. It's very likely.
So,
yes.
But that's, I mean, again, and I've been doing this for, 8 years now. So, again, I learned something new tonight, and I appreciate that.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that you learned something. I'm learning new things all the time. I get asked questions by students and people that attend these courses that I don't know the answer to. And it's a really awesome opportunity to learn more. And when it comes to weather, it's the biggest thing that's out of our control. What we can control is how we make decisions based on what weather exists. And it's not always black and white, go or no go. What's the in-between is the hard part, which I'm sure you guys all know. You guys have flown all across the country, so of course you know that. Yeah.
Very good.
Can we create a viral moment for your social media, though, real quick before we go? Do we have anything we can argue about, or maybe Ted goes ballistic, or we need to come up with something that's very attention-grabbing, that it can be excerpted and made into a soundbite that goes viral on your social media so that people get into your webinars? I guess you can't really contrive this stuff, can you?
No.
I don't know. Some people do. I clearly haven't done it yet.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
All right,
There was a comment earlier that I thought would be a good show title, but Brian, you're going to have to go back and listen to it because it's now outside my brain. Oh, there it is. Yeah.
Mafia,
friend,
which won't be mentioned. Yes.
Our friend Elliot Cox, he has a acronym for flying in high density altitude, and the acronym is MAFIA. So we're not going to say what it is. You're going to send us feedback into what you think MAFIA stands for when it comes to high density altitude flying.
There you go.
How about that?
Yeah.
Oh, we're in now. We've been in the aviation situation for a while now. When we're just thinking, what aviation needs?
More acronyms.
More acronyms. we can do better. We can make better acronyms.
Well, his was pretty good.
It's great. No, I love it. Thank you
Yes.
for that, Elliot.
Well, all right. Well, why don't we wrap up this episode 135? I'm going to take tonight's bit of wisdom from the chat. It's from our friend Nathan Ballard. And Nathan says, all of this density altitude reduced performance stuff sounds suspiciously a lot like how we all are in midlife. Yes, at midlife, we are definitely at a reduced performance level. So.
No, we're at a high density altitude level in midlife.
There we go.
Yes.
And we're dense. You're right.
Yes.
Signing off episode 135 of the Midlife Pilot Podcast. We appreciate you guys. Y'all have a good night.